Case counts are rising, vaccine passports, and actually just announced here in BC, the mask mandate is back for interior spaces. A lot of this is caused by the Delta variant of COVID-19. So in today's video, we're going to talk about what this may mean for the Vancouver real estate housing market. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hasan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver, and I create these videos to keep you informed on the Vancouver real estate market. So in order for us to figure out how the Delta variant is going to affect real estate in Vancouver and specifically real estate prices, we have to look back at what we'll call phase one of COVID-19 and what sort of effect that had on the market. So I don't need to remind anyone, but March 2020, COVID-19 came onto the scene, and what this did is it struck a lot of fear into the federal government and the policymakers. The fear was surrounding that this was going to push us into a recessionary period. Canada and BC especially, we are driven, our economy is driven by the housing market. They couldn't afford to have this impact our economy the way it possibly could have. So they did a couple of things. Number one, the Bank of Canada, they reduced their target rate significantly. This was either at the end of March or beginning of April. And the other thing that happened as well is the stress test was reduced. And what I mean by that is it allowed for buyers to get approved for a larger mortgage. And both of these were in effect put into place so that we wouldn't fall into a recessionary period, but also to stimulate the housing market. Now, hindsight is 2020, but what I think policymakers and the government did not realize is the market was already going to be stimulated from the work from home scenario, and a lot of people starting to spend more time at home in close quarters with family members and realizing that they were going to need more space, whether it was for an office space at home because they're working from home, or just more space because literally they felt like they were going to kill each other living under the same roof for 24 hours a day while we were all locked down. And I personally think that this was one of the largest drivers, this sort of desperation, if you will, for buyers, requiring more space or fearing what it might meant for their family situation. Now, at the same time, sellers during the start of COVID-19, a lot of them chose to wait on the sidelines. There was an unknown. Nobody was inviting strangers into their homes. Nobody wanted buyers to be walking through and open houses, which, were ultimately restricted. Tenanted properties were almost unsellable unless someone was willing to purchase it sight unseen. A rule came into place where tenants did not have to open the doors for buyers, totally understandable. But what this did is it made tenanted properties, the ones that were on the market, not desirable, or sellers just decided not to list these properties at all. And that is when we saw the start of the supply crunch that would basically take us through to where we're at today. So what did phase one of COVID-19 mean for the real estate market? Well, in some areas, year over year, for certain types of properties, prices are up 20 to 30%, specifically in the detached home segment and the townhome segment. Now, the government, obviously, they realize this in hindsight, and in fact, they have reverted the stress test now, so people aren't getting approved for as high of a mortgage. But however, mortgage rates are still low, maybe not quite as low as we saw over the last several months, but they are still low, and we expect them to be that way for the foreseeable future. Now, several months ago, obviously, the vaccine rollout came to BC, and many people were getting their first shots and their second shots, and life started to heading back to normal. But like I mentioned off at the top, case counts are now rising. We have to wear masks again, and this is kind of the question mark or the gray area in terms of what might happen heading into the fall. Now, August, we're still sitting at very low inventory, but that's to be expected right now. A lot of realtors are taking time off, families are taking time off. There's not a lot of focus on the real estate market right now. Now, to really understand what the Delta variant may mean for Vancouver real estate prices, we're going to look at it from two angles, from a buyer's perspective and from a seller's perspective. From a buyer's perspective, as mentioned, demand has been increasingly heavy. And I would say over the last couple months or so, buyer demand has softened maybe a slight bit. This may have to do with it being summer months, but I also believe that part of it has to do with buyer exhaustion. Now, from a buyer standpoint, even if the Delta variant starts, we'll say, picking up steam or case counts continue to rise and we start heading backwards from a restrictions point of view, I don't really think that's going to affect buyer demand too much. There already are buyers, again, that are exhausted and they've decided to wait and put their plans on hold. But let's not forget about the Liberal government's plan to bring in 1.2 million immigrants over the next 3 years. They are on track. I believe their target for this year is 400,000, and they expect to hit that by the end of the year. What I'm sensing from buyers that I speak with is there is a genuine fear that if they don't purchase in the next 6 months or within the next 6 to 9 months, that they will be priced out of Vancouver real estate forever. And it's a sobering and it's a sad thought, really. And a lot of these buyers are actually shifting their focus now into pre-sales because they just want to get into the market. Now, we all expect that there's going to be more inventory hitting the market in September and into the fall months. Personally, I don't think it's going to be at levels that we've seen historically. Again, this is just going to put pressure on prices. I don't think it's going to be at the detached or the townhome level, because if you look at prices for those properties, they've escalated so much over a short period of time. I just can't see that sort of appreciation sustaining, and I think it's going to put a lot of pressure again on the strata, on the condo, on the first-time buyer. I think buyer demand stays relatively the same from what we saw from during phase one of COVID and during this time period of the Delta variant. Now, here's where it gets gray, and here's where it gets a little bit stark and possibly scary, is when we look at the seller perspective. Assuming that we get a handle on this Delta variant and we don't go backwards in terms of restrictions or there aren't further lockdowns, I think, again, we are going to see more inventory hit the market in the fall months. Now, if the Delta variant takes over and we start seeing higher case counts and higher hospitalizations, because that's really what this is about, right? The stress that is put on the medical centers and the hospitals, that's really what triggers a lot of the decision making in terms of lockdowns. If we see this happen and because of that, we see less listings, less people placing their homes on the market, I think we're in a very scary situation for prices and having prices escalate at a clip that, many buyers won't be able to afford. Now, in scenarios like this where, it can be really tough to sell your property and purchase another property with perfect timing. I look at two types of sellers to add inventory to the market. The first are investors. Now, the thing about investors and selling their properties is if they don't have a better place to place their funds, a better investment to place their funds, they're not going to sell their properties. And right now, it's hard to find a better investment than Vancouver real estate. So what I'm actually seeing from my clients is my phone is ringing more and more from my investor clients wanting to get back in the market. The second type of seller that I look at, and I think this market is perfect for them, are those who know exactly where they're moving to next, or they're moving out of town into a slower market. I think this is a perfect sort of environment for that, to sell over here and perhaps move away. And it's happening quite a bit. I have clients that are considering moving to the Sunshine Coast or Victoria, Kelowna. So there is this shift happening with folks that are going to continue to be work from home. And I think Delta variant does play a factor in certain companies realizing that, hey, work from home can be a permanent thing. And I think some of these folks that own property in the Vancouver area, I think they will give strong consideration to moving into these other areas for affordability reasons and to get larger space. So what does this ultimately mean for Vancouver prices? It always comes down to supply and demand, and my personal opinion is that demand will continue to outweigh supply. Not as much so, though, as phase one of COVID-19. I think the silver lining or the bright spot is last year there was a lot of fear in the market, fear-driven buyers, fear-driven sellers. But I think this year, even with case counts rising, the fact that a lot of folks have gotten their vaccines, I think people are feeling generally safer, and also people are wanting to move forward with their lives in all regards. That's socially, economically. People are still wearing their masks, but not as many as last year. And I just feel like people really want to move forward with their plans. And I think that's the best thing we can hope for when it comes to Vancouver real estate and Vancouver home prices. We need sellers to have confidence. Buyers, they already have confidence. So let's be honest, we need more sellers to have more confidence. If Delta variant pushes us backwards and we start seeing lockdowns, I fully expect prices are going to rise Now, if we enter into a situation where we get a good grasp on the Delta variant and sellers start to list their properties, because there are a lot of sellers who were planning to list this year that haven't done so, and they would still like to do so. Having said all of that, overall, I expect that demand is going to outweigh supply and prices to increase heading into the fall and heading into 2022. So guys, if you learned something in this video, I'd love it if you could hit the like button. What that does is it sends the video out to more people just like yourself. If you like these real estate videos, consider subscribing to the channel as well. Again, my name is Hasan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver. If you wanted my help to sell or buy real estate, all of my information is in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a wonderful day.